A young man drags a blue trash container down the road in what seems like a routine chore, but this act would soon be instrumental to a gruesome murder case. A woman's routine walk soon turns out to be a walk of death for her. On August 12, 2019, in the town of Hindburn, Lindsay Birbeck went out for her routine walk or run. She was so religious with this routine that she hadn't missed it in years. Initially, her plan was to start by 4 p.m. and end at close to 6 p.m., where she would then take tea with her boyfriend. Little did she know, this was the last day she would engage in such a routine. She started her walk and headed to a wooded area with walking trails in Accrington known as the Coppice, beginning her walk from Burnley Road through Peel Park Avenue. However, Lindsay Birbeck wasn't the only one out for a walk that day. Zoe Braithwaite, who was enjoying her walk, unknown to her what was lurking in the shadows, suddenly noticed a male figure with a black hoodie and cargo pants. His confident outlook perhaps was one of the major reasons why Zoe was shaken to her core, as his hands were tucked in his pocket as though he had other plans. What seemed odd to Zoe the most was that this male figure happened to be alone and seemed to be walking with intention towards her. Pretty odd, you may think. If only it ended there. While they were in their supposed battle of steps, Zoe noticed that this male figure was closing in the gap between them as though he was in a hot chase with her. This frightened her to the extent that she felt immediate actions were necessary, and at this point, she wasn't taking any chances. She took to her heels in a bid to increase the gap between their steps and get away from the dangerous situation as quickly as she could, looking for any human figure she could find plying the same road as she was. But something mysterious was about to follow. While escaping from the impending danger, Zoe took a look back, probably to acknowledge her getaway progress. However, this young man was nowhere to be found anymore. It was almost as though her hastened steps frightened him as well, and he was gone. If you were Zoe, you probably would have a deep sigh of relief. However, Zoe Braithwaite would soon find out how lucky she was on that fateful day. One question, however, that would lurk in the minds of curious individuals is, where was this supposed dangerous young man? He couldn't have disappeared, many would think. Well, you're about to find out. Lindsay, the subject of our story, had just walked into the coppice at the same time this young man had disappeared, which was about 4:30 p.m., but something mysterious happened. Her phone had mysteriously stopped working or connecting, and not for the usual reasons, which would be either it being switched off or needing repair. You wouldn't have guessed what happened to it. Lindsay's usual routine of getting back by 6 p.m. seemed to be taking longer than normal to an already anxious Sarah. Her daughter and boyfriend had been kept outside for long enough, due to the fact that Sarah had forgotten her key inside the building. At about 6:30 p.m., the same strange young man Zoe Braithwaite had encountered was captured on CCTV walking in the opposite direction of where Lindsay had gone. His appearance was sketchy and gave rise to raised eyebrows. He seemed to have been involved in quite a scuffle. But with whom? It didn't end there. This same young man was captured, making further rounds of to and fro movement around the area of the coppice. It may seem as though he had some mess to clean up, as he was seen heading towards the Accrington Cemetery, which wasn't so far off, with a sack and a blue trash bin. At this point, it was already 11:45 p.m., and an already agitated Sarah and her mom's boyfriend devised other means to gain access to the residence, with Sarah wondering why her mother had made last-minute plans without hinting a word of it to her, even after sending a couple of unreplied messages. This was what scared her the most. On August 13, 2019, Lindsay's ex-husband Tim was briefed on the happenings, and he immediately declared Lindsay missing to the police department. But this was only after frantically searching through her whole apartment and finding everything intact. Tim and Lindsay had quite a history, with their relationship dating back to their 20s and starting with a date night out. The pair got fond of each other in no time, leading to their marriage sometime later. Lindsay, who was a special needs teacher at the Hill Primary School in Burnley, derived her occupational reward in making visible impacts in the life of her students, whom she considered her children, probably owing to the birth of her two kids, namely Stephen and Sarah. Sadly, even after 20 years of marriage, Lindsay, whose life wasn't all that rosy, got in the mix-up of a divorce case with her husband, who had probably had his fair share of marital roller coasters. The marriage came to a sad end, with both parties going their separate paths. Tim, who had always been much of a family man, didn't allow the tag of divorce come in between his fatherly duties. He had always been dedicated to the family, giving help when needed and when necessary, and this case was no different. At this point, a stir of panic and tension had arisen at the coppice, and a search team consisting of dog handlers, firefighters, and volunteers who were both experienced and those who were not. Various technologies, such as drones and helicopters, were used in covering the perimeter. Quite a situation this was turning into. It was said that never before has the community worked together so swiftly and in such large numbers to assist one of their own. Slowly, the news of Lindsay's disappearance began making waves far and wide, even attracting the attention of foreigners who wasted no time in assisting with both their manpower and technology. Not even the release of CCTV footage by the police, the handing over of missing person flyers, or the use of social media was enough to end the search for Lindsay, whose mysterious disappearance had just reached the 1-week mark. With every day coming and going with its different hopes, it was becoming evident that Lindsay was gone for good. Certainly not a good reality to cope with. But something was about to happen that led to a mysterious discovery that would solve this puzzle of this case for good. Morgan Parkinson, who was identified as Lindsay's neighbor, was on a walk with his dog on August 24, 2019, when the animal's instincts picked up something of a weird smell coming from the nearby cemetery in Accrington. The dog wasted no time, probably aiming to dig out the mystery causing this weird smell. All efforts by Mr. Morgan in calling the dog to order proved abortive, as it was determined to uncover this mystery. He finally found the dog, but what he saw next made the animal probably the least of his problems. In a bid to put this stubborn animal to order, Morgan attempted to be aggressive, but then noticed that a certain harsh smell was oozing out of the shallow ground, probably already dug by the dog. His inquisitivity led him to dig out the contents of this hole, and behold, it was a dead body, concealed and attempted to be hidden by the perpetrator of the heinous act. However, the inquisitive nature of the dog had now revealed a great truth to the limelight that would lead the community in the next big step to gain justice. At about 7 p.m. on August 24, 2019, Lindsay Birbeck's body was found in the most horrific of circumstances, and the whole scenario had switched into a full-blown murder case. The whole town of Hyndburn was immediately thrown into sobbing as the hopes of a happy reunion with Lindsay had been dashed right before their very faces. Dr. Naomi Carter, the pathologist responsible for Lindsay's autopsy report, made a real shocking discovery that probably shook the town to its core. She reported that some weird marks which Lindsay's body bore suggested an attempt in cutting her legs off. Why would anyone attempt that? Many would ask. The investigation report was a bit sketchy due to the lengthy amount of time that passed before the body was found. Luckily, her nails were still intact, and with any luck, the DNA prints of the assassin may still be present. The only notable deduction from observation was the fact that her neck was fractured, which suggested strangulation or forced handling. It was obvious she was involved in a struggle before she finally passed away. The nature of struggle, too, could not be ascertained, so it was hard to deduce she was about to be forcibly violated, hence leading to the use of force from the assailant. Investigation into the death of Lindsay Birbeck was ongoing, and the police's first stop point was Tim Birbeck, her ex-husband, who many would think probably had a reason to want her gone, owing to the nature of their divorce. Mind you, Lindsay reportedly lived with her boyfriend, which gives rise to a motive of jealousy on the part of Tim. But Tim was soon cleared by the police, and the uncertain nature of the case became more and more evident, with the police in pandemonium about where to begin the investigation. Like any investigation process, the police began by first examining the CCTV footage, and this was where they made some shocking discoveries. Information from the CCTV footage revealed the presence of a 16-year-old named Rocky Marciano Price. Earlier, crime scene investigators found a yellow-handled saw and a pair of green heavy-duty gloves near Lindsay's grave, which tested positive for blood. It was later discovered that the inner part of the gloves contained Price's DNA prints, while outwardly it contained that of Lindsay. This discovery became the birth to other information surrounding the murder of Lindsay. On 3 to 4 different occasions, different people reported seeing the blue trash bin used in moving Lindsay's body, but all blatantly overlooked the significance of its presence. But of anyone to have come across the bin, only Miss Thistlethwaite made a swift reaction by taking a picture of the bin and immediately ringing the police. Officers were sent to the scene immediately, but they claimed there was no evidence linking its presence to any murder case, further complicating it. Many would ask, was this the first murder case to happen in the town of Hyndburn? The answer was no. However, Lindsay Birbeck was renowned for her selfless attitude towards others. She was loved by all. She was so nice to the extent that she was being described as being of assistance to everyone she could help when she wasn't participating in her favorite leisure activities. The whole town made it a point of duty to return the favor with their sudden echo for justice. What saddened everyone the most was the timing and method of her death. It was both uncalled, undeserved, and unnecessary. The accused perpetrator, 16-year-old Rocky Price, was part of a family of 7 who had stayed in Ighton Hill of Accrington for almost 30 years. To many, Rocky was considered a good kid who usually helped his family on their family farm. He participated in activities that normal children of his age participated in. Despite being diagnosed with autism and ADHD, he was described as one who never got angry or was never seen angry, hence it raised the question of motive behind this heinous act. Although at one point he was evaluated and was diagnosed with difficulties in expressing or feeling emotions, he was never one to break or be on the other side of the law. Rocky lived only 3 minutes away from Lindsay, yet he had no idea who she was, nor did he come across her on the streets. But for someone who was emotionless and reserved, many wondered what could have triggered such an act of brutality exhibited by the 16-year-old. They were about to find out. Rocky's parents had come across the released CCTV footage and recognized their son as the person in the image. They thus took their son to the police department, probably in a bid to gain enlightenment, because in their minds, their son wasn't capable of such a grave act. While they were at it, and after a whole lot of interrogation, Rocky remained adamant and not confessing this killing act of his. However, what he later confessed to was shocking to everyone who was present at the time. He confessed to disposing of the body, but claimed the act was carried out on a paid order by a certain individual. This should make total sense to Rocky's parents, who still believed in the innocence of their 16-year-old. He claimed he was promised a certain amount by the individual whom he had never met before that day, and that the money was never realized. He also claimed that to have been the last time he came across the individual. All efforts to prove Rocky's involvement in the crime proved abortive, as the 16-year-old stuck to his story of innocence. In January 2020, Rocky had his first trial. The jury had initially found Rocky guilty of murder after about 3 hours of intense court session. However, some new development took place momentarily backing Rocky's innocence, and a fresh set of investigations were underway. This raised different questions from an already agitated community who were clamoring for justice to be served on the wicked perpetrator. But why was this trial reconvened? On March 9, 2020, the police department made 3 arrests, which comprised of 2 males and a female, 22, 23, and 22 years old, respectively. They were accused of crimes relating to the assault of one 22-year-old, a crime regarded by many as totally unrelated to the Lindsay Birbeck case. However, a series of investigations into the case uncovered a video clip of one of their accused identifying with the murder of Lindsay and the disposal of her body. There was, however, no substantial evidence to back such claims, and it was later ruled as irrelevant to the Birbeck case. Rocky was then remanded into custody for a retrial, which was scheduled to start at Preston Town Court on June 15, 2020. During the court trial, Judge Mrs. Justice Yip, the presiding judge, made several points which were about to influence the sentence she was about to pass on the guilty juvenile. She stated that due to the fact that he had targeted Zoe Braithwaite at first and was unsuccessful shows the fact that he picked his victims at random, not for any reason whatsoever. In other words, his victim's only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. She also negated the claim the defense counsel was about to put forward, stating that he was dealing with mental challenges. She stated that the plan was executed too perfectly to have just come by chance. It was premeditated. These actions prove beyond doubt that he had his reasoning faculties in check, and this negated all the defense counsel were putting forward. Also, the murder at daylight suggests that he was a societal menace, and this posed a real risk to the community in general. After 8 days of back and forth, Rocky Price was about to discover his fate in what has seemed to be a tail-twisting trial which took 4 whole hours. The judge finally sentenced Rocky to a minimum of 16 years to life imprisonment. This meant Rocky would be subject to release only on scrutiny of the level of threat he posed to society after serving at least 16 years. Even after the minimum term, this shouldn't be good news to Rocky, who had probably lost every right to his life forever. Lindsay Birbeck's daughter was tasked with giving what is called a victim impact statement, and she had some chilling emotions to get off her chest. She claimed her mother's killer ruined their lives by opening a void that may never be filled and for no tangible reason. If only he admitted to his crimes soon enough and spared them the horror of the back-and-forth trial, which seemed to be a constant reminder of the loss of her mom. She, however, added that no sentence, no matter how light or severe, could undo the great damage the loss had caused in their family. But with all this going on, Rocky's family had their own say on the matter. They refused to believe their son would be at the end of such a heinous act, recalling that their son never admitted to the crime. However, Detective Inspector Tim McDermott had his say, claiming that the death of Lindsay was unnecessary and uncalled for. Still yet, it was disrespectful for the offender to try to deny his involvement in a crime he obviously committed, but he was grateful for the efficiency of the court in seeing through this deceit. But many would wonder, was Rocky innocent? He was never one with a troublesome reputation. How could one have gone from being non-existent to being at the forefront of a top murder case? Could it be as a result of his autism? Autism probably denotes some traits of aggression, but Rocky had crossed the line in this case. We would love to know your thoughts on this. Do you think Rocky was innocent? Or was he just an innocent target with a minor role in the murder case? If Rocky was innocent, we may have just found ourselves one of the most mysterious cases of all time. Do not forget to let us know your thoughts in the comment section, and please show some love by dropping a like, and do not forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to be part of our jaw-dropping episodes.